Lake Winnipeg Indigenous Collective represents the efforts of a group of First Nations from around Lake Winnipeg working together to restore the health of the lake. LWIC's vision is to ensure that sacred waters are healthy, that traditional livelihoods are restored, and that Indigenous perspectives are influential, leading to the protection and sustainability of Lake Winnipeg as a source of life for all future generations.
One of the ideas of the Lake Winnipeg Indigenous Collective was to bring together who's involved with the unhealthy state of Lake Winnipeg. You got industry, you got agricultural, you got water and sewer systems from municipalities. A large one that we have that impacts it directly would be the city of Winnipeg and Selkirk. I know they're taking steps to mitigate that, and they got better treatment systems, but it still flows into our lake. And that's where we started saying, well, we need to start to develop a strategy with our communities to come together, to start focus on projects and start to do our own reports and summaries from the perspective of our communities. I think most cases, the reports and studies that are done from a governmental perspective, and from that are only reported from a governmental perspective. We had concerns come forward from the community in terms of its health and issues surrounding Manitoba Hydro and its regulations of our lake, which has impacted historically our hunting and fishing. Brokenhead was at one time a fishing community. I think we're down to 2 or 3 fishermen now that commercially hold a license here, from a 70% at one time used to fish. It all relates to the impacts that have happened over the years.
My whole life I've lived in this area, traveled up and down this river to Lake Winnipeg, and I've hunted, fished all along it. It's pretty dangerous going out. If you were just to jump in a boat and drive, you'd probably, if you didn't know where you're gonna go, you're gonna get locked up on a sandbar or whatnot. The water too, like from the marsh it's coming through, it's pretty stained and dirty, and not as many walleye as in the past. And actually, this is the first year I found that I got those zebra mussels on my anchors and up the ropes, and they are coming up this way.
The challenges that our community is facing, it's like a cultural impact on our harvesting activities. The pollution that's been happening in the south basin of Lake Winnipeg has been ongoing for decades, and it's also, I think, impacted the activities that we can do on the lake, even recreationally. Going to the beach and enjoying a day at the beach with your family is becoming even increasingly difficult because of the algae that comes up onto the shoreline.
In the summers, when I pick up my little cousins to go to the beach, I definitely question whether we should be going to the beach because of all the bacteria and the different kinds of diseases that animals are catching and stuff. So I question whether or not it's safe enough to take them some days. But when I was younger, we never used to think about that. We used to just pack up the car and go down to the beach and go hang out in the water. But now we have to pay attention to the news and whether or not the bacteria level is too high or whether or not it's safe enough.
Even the medicines that grow along the rivers, along our river here, the LWIC, and I wasn't able to get that much this year when picking, but it's very hard to find. It's that's even depleting. And even the bulrushes, a lot of that stuff underneath doesn't feel the way it used to feel when we used to dig it. Things are starting to change.
Well, it means everything. That's where we got our food from. Way back, you go back in history that I heard some of the old people talk about, was that the ones that thrived were the ones that were living near the lakes. So the lake, to me, is a provider for myself, my family, and the people who wish to harvest. It meant everything to us.
We lived in harmony with these systems, and these systems were respected to the point that we only took what we needed to sustain our community. Now you got commercial fishermen, you got industries like Manitoba Hydro that are now exporting away from this country, but the impacts are happening within this territory. And I think those are the key things, is how are our communities impacted and how are we benefiting? At this point, we're only impacted with no benefit. And I think that part needs to change. And I think our communities need to come together and start to look at how do we develop strategies, or how does the lake get to be utilized in a sustainable manner?
It affects us all. whether we're Indigenous communities or non-Indigenous communities. And so what I would like to see is more education and awareness and start putting action into cleaning up the lake. They have to include Indigenous communities.
And we need to start to be brought in from the beginning of decision making that allow our communities to have a voice that can actually impact real change or mitigation plans. We cannot continue to allow our land and shorelines to be eroded into the bottom of this lake. Our lands need to be protected, the fisheries need to be protected, and the people's livelihoods need to be protected.